Okay, so I will call to order the Conservation Commission Inland Wetland Agency meeting on Tuesday, July 26, 2022 at 6:02 p.m. Via video conference and teleconference. Alexis, can you do the roll call?
Yes, Cheryl Brown,
Here.
John Mailing,
Here.
Matt Merluzzi,
Here.
Matt Pence,
Here.
and Ed Holowinko. Okay.
Okay, so the first item or item number 3 on the agenda is public comments. I'm not seeing anybody who's called in, but
No, and there are no attendees, so I
okay.
don't think there is any public comment tonight.
Okay, so we can move on. There doesn't appear to be anything under item 4, receipt and discussion. So we'll move on to item number 5, discussion and or decision. The first item on the agenda is permit number S22-596, 75 Witch Lane, FC Engineering, dredging of an existing pond in and adjacent to a wetlands and water course.
Right, so this has been on the agenda for some time, and it is a significant regulated activity that requires a public hearing. And the hearing needs to be scheduled for the August 9th meeting.
Okay, and we have no more information on it at this point.
Not yet. So a third-party outside reviewer was retained. They cannot get comments in until the 23rd of August. The applicant is aware of this kind of scheduling snafu, but at this point, the hearing would have to open on the 9th of August. But it can open and then be continued to the September 13th meeting for further discussion. And it will be at that continued public hearing that will have the full report from the outside consultant.
Okay, do I have to make a motion to, okay.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to schedule the public meeting for S22-596, 75 Witch Lane for August 9th. Do I have a second?
Second.
Great. Any discussion? Okay, so I guess we're all set and we will schedule that, and we can move on to the next item on the agenda, which is S22-599, 20 Lancaster Drive, Goldman, for activities dredging a pond in and adjacent to a wetland and water course. So do we have anybody here to speak?
Looks like Mr. Goldman is here. At the last meeting, I don't think you discussed the item, and at the meeting previous to that, there was some discussion regarding some of the elements of the application that still remained incomplete. And looks like Mr. Goldman is sharing his screen. If you want to give us an update, that would be great.
Alexis, did we receive the application fee for this one?
No, we have not.
Okay, is it normal practice to be at this stage without the fee?
No, it is not.
Okay, do any fellow commissioners have any feelings about this? It just seems a little bit out of the ordinary.
Alexis, what are your thoughts on this as far as it occupying our time and not having the fee yet? Do we continue hearing it?
Yeah, I think that can be up to the up to the commission. It is an application fee. It's not a permit fee. And typically it is paid at the time of application. I know that Mr. Goldman had requested a fee waiver, and that waiver was turned down. I also do understand that Mr. Goldman is very aware of his expenditures with this project, and from comments that he's relayed to me on phone calls, he's reticent to submit the fee if he feels that the application has the potential to be denied. So it certainly has the, it will be, your regulations require it that if the fee is not paid, it is considered an incomplete application subject to denial. So it certainly will be denied if the fee is not paid. And again, I would not schedule the public hearing at this point because of the expenditures associated with the public hearing. I would encourage you to encourage the applicant to make some progress in completing his application. But how you do that, it's up to you.
Just looking back over what we've been through here, my own sense is that there's nothing I've seen so far that suggests to me that there's an overriding problem with this application. But we are waiting for a marked up survey or plot plan that shows more specifically the extent of the wetlands. That's my understanding as to where we left off. Putting the fee business to one side, I just wanted to give a personal opinion as to where I see this now.
Okay, does anybody have any objections to continuing?
I don't think it's a good practice to, hear an application without the fee being paid. I think it sets a bad precedent. I know we spent a lot of time on this last time, so that's my feeling, but I will defer to you guys.
I would like to tell you where I am.
Fair enough.
Okay, well, let's hear where you are, and we'll see how we can continue with this.
Okay.
So you have the floor. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Goldman.
So just if there are people who haven't heard this before, the first slide is, this is what I want to do. It's the same exact thing that I did in 1993. After 1993, we had a lot of wildlife that you can see there. Right now, we don't even have the frogs anymore, and it's pretty sad. We would also like to clean out the invasives, and I went down there and I looked what we have. We have, it's mugwort, bittersweet, lots of Japanese barberry, mile a minute, and this stuff which I can't even pronounce called winged Euronymous, maybe. And there's lots of poison ivy, and it's an amazing mosquito habitat. So that's what's there. I went and I spoke to some, professional wetland scientists and soil scientists. I went down the list. Most of them have not responded at all. I don't know what that means, whether that just means that this is too small and they're not interested. One of them said they want $1,800 minimum, which for me is a lot of money. The other one who responded wanted $750, not to do the work, but to define the work and estimate how much the work would cost. So that's where I am. And, I know that there are people who want everything to be done just right. But my feeling is we know exactly what's going to be disturbed. We know what wetlands is going to be disturbed. It's the pond and it's the banks of the pond, the same as last time. And the question I want to address is, will knowing what kinds of soils, will that change anything? And if it doesn't change anything, and Alexis has said, I'm not as rich as some of the people who've come before you. I don't have a lot of money, and to spend thousands of dollars, which it looks like it's going to be, just to do something that won't change anything. There was concern last time about the dam and the fish and how the dam was going to affect the fish. The fish are dead. Everything is dead. All the wildlife is dead except for mosquitoes. There was concern about the original planting plan had non-native species. Right now, it's all invasives. It's just 100% invasives, which I would like to clean out. I think that the pond is an asset to the environment. I know that people would drive by and stop and look at it. It has, waterfowl and amphibians. The current swamp, I don't think it's an asset to any of us. And left alone, I can see it. I can almost mow it now. And in a few years, it's just going to be a lawn. And I think that it would make me sad. And I hope that it will make you sad. And so what I ask is, please don't make me spend all this money on something that won't change anything, which will price me out of the project. That's where I am. So if I can go ahead without spending all the money on those scientists, I'm happy to do so.
Commissioners?
Well, we're constrained by the limits that both the law and the state put on us. We need to know where the wetlands are.
Is it all of the wetlands or just the wetlands that will be disturbed?
Like we discussed during the last meeting and then after the meeting, the wetland delineation does not need to go all the way to the very southern portions of your property where it is very clearly all wetlands. It does need to cover the areas where you're proposing work. So the banks on the for the access, all the areas immediately around the pond, and then the area where you're proposing to deposit the all of the dredged material.
Right. So like I said, it's the pond and the banks. I can do that on the map. It's, the map shows the banks. It has the topographic ISO, whatever they're called, isobars. Do I really need to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on that I don't have? I can draw it on the map. We all know where it is. It's the pond and the banks of the pond.
I guess that's the part that is not very clear, but that is up to the commission. The application requires the delineation of wetlands.
The wetlands that will be disturbed.
But the wetlands are defined by the underlying soil. Drawing them on a schematic does not address the actual extent and existence of the wetlands. It just does not.
Well, at worst, I'd be covering more than the wetlands that is there. It's not going to be less because I'm saying it's the whole pond and the whole banks of the pond. If it's less than that, that's only better. It's not going to be any worse than that.
It's going to disappear, as you say, in time anyways, if nothing's done.
It's almost gone now. There are two, when it rains, there are two little streams that go through it, and the rest is just mud with invasives. And I understand, and if I was rich, I would hire all these people and spend the thousands of dollars. But
yeah, well, what the soil scientist does is they determine the extent of it, and just because an area is maintained as, say, a lawn and it's filled in, it doesn't necessarily change the quality of the soils underneath and their original intrinsic functions.
Yes, I understand.
So, and I do think that, you know, what you want to do is great. I think that, you know, removing the invasives is fantastic, but we also need to be concerned about where some of the soils are being placed and that we're not filling in a wetland by taking out the soil from the dredge. And that's where one of my concerns is. And I don't want to speak for any of the other commissioners, but that's one of my concerns, not having the delineation.
Okay, so the spoils will be going behind the house, which is the south side where the pool was. There was a pool when we moved in, and we took the pool out because it was rotting away. It wasn't made with pressure treated wood, and that's where the soil went last time. They didn't do it right, and what I'm proposing is not to do anything any different than what I did last time. Now, if for some reason you say we can't put the soil there and we have to, you know, cart it away to upstate Connecticut, that will add about $40,000 to the price, and it's undoable. So I don't know if it's wetlands. There was a pool there.
Well, you're proposing, so you, like you said, 30 years ago, you have filled in the pool, and now you're still proposing to move, I think it was about 500 cubic yards of material into that same area, and you showed it going down the slope, including the areas that were concerned might be wetlands.
Which are it's a cliff now. What the contractor did, instead of sloping it last time the way he was supposed to, he just stuck some boulders there, and it's just a cliff full of mugwort and poison ivy right now.
Right, but you to extend that, to soften that slope, you would be extending it into what appears to be wetlands.
Right.
I think that is the concern.
Okay, well, I guess.
And just to reiterate, I know that you've said that you want to do the same exact work as in 1993. But you've also said that the work done in 1993 didn't follow the plan.
To be clear, I want to do the work that was proposed in 1993. The contractor didn't follow the plans.
Okay, but then you also want to add work on a dam that is not included in the plan.
Well, the dam, he was supposed to build the dam. He just did a lousy job.
Okay, the original plan though that shows the limit of work before the dam and no work on the dam.
No, the proposal was to rebuild the dam. If we don't rebuild the dam, the pond becomes a puddle, and it's not, I mean, it's not worth it to anyone.
But I just would have to say, from my own standpoint, I need to see the wetlands definition. That's consistent with what we require of other applicants. And it's not, I think, outlandish or unusual to want to see it here. I regret the cost of doing all this sort of thing, but you know, we don't have a budget screen that this all goes through. In order to make a decision as to approving the application, we need to know from a soil scientist, a wetland scientist, the definition of where those wetland soils end.
Well, I know you need it.
What the wetlands are. That's my view. That's where I would stand if we took a vote today.
Okay. The question is, do you need it? Can I just do it myself? Because I know exactly what's going to be disturbed. If I have to spend all that money, you know, it's like I said in the slide, if you price me out of the project, we wind up with a suburban lawn. Somebody will put up, a hockey net or a swing set, and it'll be sad. I'm looking at the background on your screen. It looks really nice. I regret it if you price me out of this.
I'm not trying to price you out. We're just trying to follow the protocols that we need to follow.
Well, I understand you need the wetlands delineated, and I can do that.
Well, a wetland needs to be delineated by a certified soil scientist. That's kind of the key part of it.
Is that the law?
That is our protocol, and that's what we require. Typically, this is also a significant regulated activity, which means that you're actually doing work in the wetland, and it increases our need for oversight of these items.
Okay, so that's what I thought. It's not the law that I have to spend this money, it's the desire of the committee. And it's just,
You are going to be doing work in the wetlands of your.
of course, I'm dredging the pond. Yes.
The wetlands that you're going to be working on can only be defined in terms of the underlying soil, and that definition is legal. It is imposed on us from the state of Connecticut, and we have no option to say that the wetlands are someplace where we don't really absolutely know where they are, and B, that the wetlands have a type of soil that we haven't actually scientifically studied.
Well,
So it's essential to know what the limit of the wetlands are, not in terms of a very accurate estimation from the top, but from the measurement of the soil samples that underlie the property. And that measurement to be dependable, as far as I know, has to be made by a professional who's trained to do it correctly.
even if I just say the whole disturbed area is wetlands, because that's what I'm saying, the pond and the banks of the pond.
Even if.
Well, it's too bad. I think it would have been nice, but I guess I'll just wait, and the next people that move in can try again. I mean, I'm old. I don't know how long I'll be here, but it's just a shame that that's what it has to be. Okay, so is that the sense of the whole committee, or do some people feel the way I do, that it would be nice to have a pond?
I think it'd be nice to have a pond, but if these guys know the rules more intricately than I do, where you put the soil, I understand that argument if it's going to drip back into wetlands.
It will not drip back. We use muck from the pond right now to we put it on steps, and we put it in other places. It's all clay. The sun hits it. The last time we did it, they were very concerned about planting right away so that there would not be erosion. That stuff is hard as a rock. It's when they pile it up, it's not going anywhere. And you can see this. I have some railroad ties and steps where I've put some terracing. That stuff just doesn't move.
I'm in the same boat. I live in Silvermine, on the Silvermine River Basin, and my whole backyard probably wouldn't have been zoned if, for anything if it hadn't been built in the 70s,
Mm-hmm.
So,
my sense is that it's not a state law. It's what the committee routinely does.
So the wetland regulations are a state law, and then our municipal regulations are also a law. And in those regulations, it defines different types of regulated activities and states that those regulated activities need to gain the permission of the wetland agency.
I
The
understand.
regulations spell out what application materials need to be submitted in order to be a complete application. And you're correct, the agency does have some amount of leniency for the scope of the information required. For example, the significant regulated activities require an ecological evaluation by a professional wetland scientist, in addition to the wetland delineation, which is required for any wetland permit, whether it's a minor, intermediate, or significant. They can require a survey. They can require all sorts of information, but some information they can waive. However, as Vice Chairman Brown was saying, for a significant regulated activity, the agency have to be able to justify the decision that they come to. And in order to make an informed decision on a activity that has the high potential to have a very significant impact on a wetland and a water course, they need a certain amount of information to base their decision on. And I think what they've been saying since the receipt of the application is that there is not enough information in your submitted materials for them to make the decision that you would like. And you and I, before you applied, you and I had met and we had looked over the 1993 plan, and I think I did note that it was 30 years ago, and that a lot has changed in those 30 years as far as our understanding of wetland impacts. So it is a lot in that they, at the end of the day, they have to decide whether to grant you a permit or not. And what I'm hearing is that the majority of commissioners are not willing to issue a permit without a bit more justification and explanation. And I think that even without, I think that they're being very generous with all of the other information that has been submitted. So I just want to put that out, that the wetland delineation is kind of at the very bottom of the list that is required across the board. And for a significant regulated activity, the agency more typically requires even more information, like the professional wetland scientist to do a wetland impact analysis, an engineer to look at the construction of the dam. And I think that was the discussion about the dam the last time, not the fish impacts, but the concern that the dam would fail again, and not understanding the lateral extent of the impoundment with the dam, that we have no information about its construction.
Yeah, so it sounds like you said that you have some flexibility on the professional wetland scientist, and that delineating the wetlands might be sufficient, because that will save
So
that.
that was just my example in previous meetings. The various commissioners have indicated to you that they would want to see a wetland assessment.
That's the professional wetlands scientist.
Correct.
Okay, I guess keep me in mind, Alexis, if things change in a few years, and maybe we can try again. Sorry.
So Alexis, if this permit application, if Mr. Goldman is taking out his permit application, do we have to do anything? Do we have to make any motions regarding this if he's saying that he's not going to provide any more information at this point?
Not at this point. Mr. Goldman would need an email is fine, an email from you stating that you're withdrawing the application.
Okay.
Without that email, then at your next meeting, I would have to recommend that the agency deny the application.
Okay. All right, thank you so much for your time. Sorry it didn't work
Thank you
out.
thank you for your time
Okay,
as well. Okay, so we can move on to application S22-601, 198 West Norwalk Road, Baker. Corrective action, removal of vegetation and revegetation of a slope adjacent to a wetland and water course. And Alexis, I saw that you had put together a draft resolution on this.
Yes, I had, based on the comments of the last meeting. I drafted a memorandum that includes a draft resolution to approve with some conditions. That is correct.
Okay, so
issues,
I
sorry.
don't think there's any, I mean, we've definitely discussed this quite a bit. I would like to make a motion to approve the draft resolution for S22-601, 198 West Norwalk Road, Baker, dated July 20th, 2022, with the conditions outlined in the resolution. Do I have a second?
Second motion.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, so I'm not hearing any discussion, so we should take a vote. Everybody in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody not in favor? And any abstentions? Okay, so the resolution passes. Thank you for your time, Mr. Baker, and
And
Thank
Mrs.
you.
And
Thank
Mrs.
you for your
Baker.
time.
So
and we
have a
appreciate your attention to this matter. So
just a question. So
yes,
Alexis, do I receive? I don't know what the resolution is.
Yes, I will, I will email it to you tomorrow. We'll
Okay.
send you a permit.
All
And
right.
it pretty much says, do what you have described. And complete it within 3 months of the corrective action approval.
Okay. And I just want to thank the committee, not just because this worked out the way it did, but I have found this to be a very interesting process, not just on my part, but other people that you've, witnessed. And I didn't know much about what you guys do. And it's kind of fascinating. And so good. Thank you. Thank you for your service.
Next time we have an opening, Mr. Baker, we'll be in touch.
Yeah, great. Okay.
exactly.
Thank you.
Let's recruit.
Thank you, Chairman John. Bye-bye.
You have.
Have a nice night.
Bye.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda, Alexis, can I group these three together?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
As noted during the receipt of the application, these are three contiguous properties. The activities are all the same, which is repair of or replacement, I'd say, of the old masonry retaining wall that forms the banks of the 5 Mile River with an engineered concrete block solution. All three would have the same sedimentation erosion controls, which is a coffer dam that would be installed waterward of the walls temporarily. I did send you, based on your comments at the last meeting, I did send you a memorandum with a three draft resolutions. There are 3 separate resolutions. They all separately reference the individual properties and the individual property owners. Other than that, they are all extremely similar, except with the articulation of a planting. At the last meeting, let me just get my memo up here. You had discussed the desire to have some sort of return of a buffer And it sounded like the shading of the river was a priority. And so for all of them, the special condition number 5 talks about the return of shade vegetation to the river, and that a buffer have a minimum of 5-foot width from the wall, but that buffer can have a 10-foot wide opening within that buffer. And then it calls for the planting of a certain number of either multi-stem or small trees that are a minimum of number 10 sized nursery containers. So basically trees, but not extremely large shade trees, which following the events that led to the collapse of the wall, I think that the applicants would be more comfortable with.
Okay, so should I announce like each application as one group? Do like say their numbers and everything? I'm sorry, I'm new.
Yeah,
to this.
I think you can clump them together unless
Okay.
unless someone has
Okay.
an issue with one.
So we'll be discussing S22-602 285 Rowayton Ave, Cohen, S22-603 283 Rowayton Ave, Sadiq Khan, and S22-604 291 Rowayton Ave, Waishid. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that.
Okay.
And does anybody want to speak from these parties?
Sure. I can just add one thing, just as a clarification to what I had presented on last time. Again, for the record, Joseph Canis, a licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut, actually the engineer of record for all 3 of the properties. My comment tonight pertains to Mr. D. Khan's property at 283 Wayton Avenue. At our last meeting, had stated that the reconstruction of the wall would actually stop 10 feet of the south property line. It turns out that the mason contractor was out there last week and determined that the full length of the wall will need to be replaced, which is actually what is shown on the plans.
Okay,
Okay, and that's all.
thank you. All right,
Understood.
any commissioners?
I'm just, Alexis, just do all of the condition number 5 plannings paragraphs, are they all identical?
They are not. The
I mean,
the first,
we have a certain length overall and a certain number of plants that we define.
correct.
And
So
I don't quite have a sense as to, how many we have and what the spacing is across the entire length of all 3.
right, okay. So the going from the most downhill property 283, I don't have it in front of me, but I believe that the total width of the property is about 35 feet. And so then it removes a 10-foot wide kind of area where there could be either the return of the flagstone patio or whatever the homeowner would want. That leaves you with a 25-foot width. And then the next property at 283, I believe, is about 30 feet wide. And so that would leave you with a 20-foot long planting area. And then the last property, I don't have my notes in front of me, but that the property, the length of the width of the property is even longer, but the area of work is quite small. And so the proposed special condition 5, which details plantings, is the same for 285 and 283, because those 2 properties are substantially similar, with 4 multi-stem or small trees. And the property at 291, special condition just calls for 2.
Okay, so that's give or take 10 trees over a space of about 100 feet.
No. It'd be
More or less.
20 feet. 20 feet of the wall is getting replaced.
Right, but he's saying over the entire length, would be 10 feet, 4, 4, and 2. Correct.
4 and 2. Oh, you want it the whole length of the wall?
Well, the point is to, I don't know, I twisted my chair a little bit because we went around on this before with whatever that street is, McCovery or whatever it is, place. And
So for McKendree, you actually did not require a planting plan.
is
You
that
did
right?
require a buffer for the property at 291 and 285 back in 2007.
Okay, so we muffed it. And as a result, we've got a strip of concrete with a strip of trap rock behind it and no plantings whatever, because we didn't ask for them. So I think I'd like to just be absolutely certain that we don't make that mistake a second time. So you say you're going to replace 20 feet of the wall and not the entire wall?
No, the only damage is 20 last lower portion of the property is 20 feet of that washed out. And so
And
that's
this
the
is
only
for-
area that worked on.
For
The rest of the
property at 291, right?
Yes, 291 is only 20 feet that's been disturbed. So the rest of the property is not going to be worked on. It's not going to be disturbed at all.
Okay, so 291 is the 20-foot strip.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And so what exactly again are 283 and 285 asking for?
So those would both be replacing the full length of the wall on their properties.
Which
And their
is-
properties are about 30 feet wide and about 35 feet wide, if I remember correctly.
Okay, well, that's what I thought, and that's what I was trying to verify, because if you're gonna have strips of wall with joints in between them, they're not gonna be very long lasting and will continue to damage the flow of the river. And so having one continuous one, which I think is what Mr. Canis said in the beginning was the plan.
Yeah. Yes, that is.
There's going to be basically, let me just, again, where we're talking about something in the neighborhood of 80 to 100 feet, running feet for the three properties. Is that more or less correct?
35, 30, 65, more than 85 feet.
Okay, 85 feet. And what we're saying is that we want to make sure that we've got stream sheltering plantings running along that whole 85 feet.
Mhm.
And we'll have to take our lumps on what happened at McChesney Court or whatever the name of it is. Which is a good example of what we don't want. Right there next to whatever number that would be, 291 or something.
283.
Okay,
All right, so does anyone want to make a motion at this point?
Can I just say one thing? 285, can you hear me?
Oh, of course.
I just want to clarify that on my property, there's approximately 10 feet from the wall to the back of a garage. So that has to be taken into account as far as not planting trees too close to a garage.
Yes.
I'm sure it can be worked out, but just
Yep.
calling it out.
understood.
I'd say I would argue that the condition is worded in a manner that gives you flexibility as far as the location of the four multi-stem trees.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I will step up and make a motion to approve the combined application of S-22602, S-22603, and S-22604 as outlined in staff memorandum of July 20th and subject to the conditions therein.
Do we have a second? I seem to be having a little internet trouble right now, so you'll have to bear
Okay.
with me.
Second that.
Okay. Commissioner Pence seconds it. Any more discussion? Okay, so let's take a vote. All in favor of passing this draft resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Commissioner Hollowinko is abstained.
Yeah.
So it looks like we have five. So all three resolutions are passing. Great. Well,
Thank you.
thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Okay, so we can move on to application S-22-605, 8 Leslie Lane, Mead, for construction of a retaining wall adjacent to a wetland. And it looks like we have Mr. Mead here. I know, Alexis, you had mentioned that we might have more materials. I didn't see any.
I
So-
arrived at work about 10 minutes before the meeting started, and so it was, no, you received nothing from me.
Okay.
At all, my apologies.
I'm happy to share them on screen if that's helpful.
That would be
That would
very
be
helpful. Thank you.
Wonderful. So just to take a step back, at the last meeting, there was some discussion regarding some additional information that the applicant should provide to kind of clarify on the on paper, on a plan, the extent of the activities. He did email me that information. It is not currently up on the website, but it was received in the office. I know that does you guys no good. And I'm on a different laptop than my usual one. So if you want to share your screen, Mr. Mead, that would be fantastic. And just to recap, the previous site plan did not have any sedimentation erosion controls, and also didn't show the extent of fill. I think it sent me an updated one, but this do. So the green line is the
Yeah, I'm happy to kind of talk through the various different lines if that's helpful, Alexis. I've got 3 drawings I can show you and just maybe talk through, if that's okay.
Yes, please do.
Very good. And hopefully you can hear me okay. So the first drawing I've actually got here is a similar drawing to what I provided previously. What I've added to this is 2 things. One is try to demonstrate the width of the depth, I guess, of the wall. So I've actually made it a slightly darker black line here in the middle. It is attempting to be at scale. The actual depth of that wall is going to be 18 inches. So that kind of tried to demonstrate that it's actually an 18-inch wall. Hopefully you can see that. And then the other thing that I've shown on here is the silk fence. The overall wall is about 90 feet long. The silk fence that I've purchased is 100 feet long. And the idea will be that it would run the length of the wall and actually hang over about 4 or 5 feet at each end, and would run just inside of the current wetlands that are marked here. So the green line is the marked wetlands. The silk fence will run along the inside of that line, and then the wall will be built between 18 inches and 4 feet inside that silk fence. Does that make sense?
I'm sorry, was it 4 feet from the silt fence is the wall?
At the far end here, the northern end, it's actually about 4.5 to 5 feet. At the narrowest end, it will be about 18 inches to 2 feet away from where the wall is being built. And the length varies, or the distance varies along the wall, depending upon the wetlands themselves are not exactly horizontal to the wall. So as it kind of jogs along, some parts are slightly further in distance than others. We can come back to that one in a second. The second drawing I've done, you see the second drawing here, which is the front elevation of the wall. There was a request just to kind of get a sense around the front elevation. As I mentioned, it's about a 90-foot long wall. Again, because of the fact that the wetlands themselves kind of undulate a little bit, at the southern end, The height is about 4 feet, or is exactly 4 feet. It's about 56 feet of the overall wall, runs about 4 feet in height. And then it slowly kind of graduates up to the shortest end at the northern part of the property, which ends up being around about 6 to 9 inches, depending upon exactly how far we kind of come across. And you can see there that at different points it actually kind of graduates up. I've also tried to mark here the steps that we'll actually be building, which will be somewhere in the center of our house. So we have steps coming down from the front door, and then they will subsequently step down into the wetlands. And the main point there is that the lowest step will be horizontal with the wall. So the steps themselves kind of graduate up into the lawn. It doesn't graduate down into the wetlands itself. So if I come back to this earlier line, you can see that there is no point that kind of, the steps don't kind of follow into the wetlands themselves. They basically kind of graduate back into the lawn area. And then the third drawing I've created, and again, apologies that all of these are somewhat hand-drawn. I've tried to actually make them to the best ability to scale. This one is actually at a scale of 25:1. And what I've tried to show is at the southern end of the property, which is where the wall is 4 foot tall. You can see the graduation of the grass line running back into the lawn. That works out to be about 7 feet from the wall to the grass line, 6.5 to 7 feet. It shows the location of the silk fence, and it shows the location of the wetlands here. So the fill area at that end will be roughly what I mentioned as being 45 degrees. It actually is probably closer to kind of 55 degrees. At the northern end, which is where the wall is about 6 to 9 inches tall, the wall runs to the grass line about 4 feet. And the fill area there you can see is very, very minimal. And again, across the length of the wall, it varies depending upon the height of the wall. In most of the locations where the wall is 4 feet tall, the fill area is somewhere between 5.5 to 6.5, 7 feet. At the narrowest or the shortest end of the wall, it's somewhere between 4 and 4.5 feet. You can see here the silk fence. This is the widest point. The silk fence ends up being about 4.5, 5 feet away from the wall. At the narrowest point, they actually about 18 inches, 24 inches.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioners, any questions or comments?
I have 2 questions. Mr. Mead, are you building this wall yourself?
No. It's a pretty big construction with pretty large stones. So no, I won't be building it. I've actually got a contractor, a local contractor. He actually did the stonework on my neighbour's property, which I think was approved Lexus maybe 2.5, 3 years ago. That's Dan Perez. So it's the same contractor who actually did the work on that wall. So he's very familiar. He's also the same guy who actually cuts the lawns around here, does the tree work. So he's pretty familiar with the area.
Okay, and what's the impact on the flow of the water?
There is no flow of water. If I kind of come back to the original map here, there's really no water course that goes through. The wetland basically, at the worst point when you get heavy rain, generally pools around this kind of area. But the actual wetlands kind of extends obviously further than where the actual water falls. We've lived in the property for 5 months now, and pretty much from across here all the way up to the edge of the wetland boundary, there's never been any standing water.
Okay, so because I mean, prior to this wall, it would flow off the slope, right?
Yeah, so I think really what it is it's the erosion that it doesn't really kind of flow so much. It's just that when you get heavy rain, what ends up happening is the soil will actually kind of erode down the slope. So it's really about erosion rather than standing water.
Just a question in terms of the contractor, are they envisioning putting in, because this is your drawing, like drainage in the retaining wall?
So there is currently, it's a very good question. There's currently a gutter pipe that kind of runs from this area around about here underneath the lawn. and actually that kind of comes out at the bottom of the slope. I would envisage actually keeping that pipe in the same place and actually having it running through the wall. It purely and simply gutter runoff. I think there's another one on this side as well, which is also gutter runoff.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I believe I heard you say this is going to be a dry stack wall. Is that correct? Without mortar or concrete?
No, there would be mortar that actually holds the rocks in place. What it wouldn't be is that you wouldn't see the mortar at the front of the wall. So the idea is that the mortar would be at the back end of the wall, so you could only see the stones from the front. I'm not quite sure the name of that, but I know it actually has cement and concrete that actually kind of holds the stones in place, but it just isn't visible from the front of the wall.
Okay, but the depth of the wall under the soil is only 18 inches, correct? It's not going to have a full footer.
That's correct. It's just
Okay.
the 18 inches. There may be some stones. When I spoke to the contractor, he said that some of the stones themselves may be slightly bigger than 18 inches, especially on the foundation piece. But the expectation is that the predominant wall is sorry, the fly that keeps buzzing around me, would be 18 inches.
Okay. I think the only thing that I'm seeing that I would like to see, something that's missing, is how you're going to revegetate in front of the wall, which is most proximal to the wetland. I would like to see, some kind of seeding or planting in there to make sure that, the soil that got disturbed is then, it won't erode away after you're done with your project.
Just to make sure I understand that, are you talking about on this side of the line, or are you talking about on this side?
The wetland side, the downhill side.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I have no problem with that. I mean, I'd mentioned to Alexis before that I plan to kind of try to put some more plantings in. I kind of like the plants that kind of, attract bees and butterflies and so on. So we were certainly looking to actually add some plantings. Interestingly, since one of the things that we've actually seen, I mentioned on the last call that the plantings that the previous owner had put in, most of those have taken, probably about 85% have taken, a few of them have actually died. But we do seem to have quite a lot of invasive weeds, and I made a note of what they were. I'm just going to look up on my phone if you don't mind, which I was actually going to ask whether it's something that I can actually remove and replace with wetlands plants or better wetlands plants. But if you give me 1 second, I just need to actually kind of confirm what it was called, because I did look it up. It's Japanese stilt grass, which I believe is actually invasive. It seems like when the previous plants were put in, there may have been some seed with that, and it seems to have kind of spread out quite a lot. I would like to remove that if I can, and actually kind of backfill it with more attractive wetlands type of plants. So I'd be very happy.
As long as we, stick with native Connecticut wetland plants, we're usually good with that. So
yeah. So I did take a note of a few of the other ones that are in there. There's some sweet gate, some sweet pepper bush. I think these are the ones that actually the previous owner put in. That seems to have taken quite well. So we'd be looking to do maybe something similar to that. Maybe some other ones that are more flowering.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, so Alexis, do you think you have enough to go forward with possibly drafting us a resolution for next meeting? Okay.
Absolutely.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Mead, for your time.
My pleasure. Can I just ask a quick question? I'm not sure when the next meeting is. On my original application, I was looking to get a contractor to start early August.
Right.
Sounds like that might not necessarily now be the case.
Their next meeting is August 9th.
August 9th.
In 2 weeks, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right.
So we can move on to the bond release and reduction requests. So we have S16-493 for Twin Pond Drive, Sorge. I'm bad with last names here. They're requesting their bond release of $4,670 held for corrective action restoration of a wetland with removal of fill/driveway within a wetland. Can you update us, Alexis?
Yes, this was a 2016 corrective action following a violation. Twin Pond is off of New Canaan Avenue. So if you're headed on New Canaan Avenue towards New Canaan, Twin Pond is a private road on the right, just before Orchard Lake condos. There's a shared drive to access all of the lots, but the lots actually have frontage on New Canaan Avenue. Mr. Sorge's property is at the very end of these shared driveways. He had done some driveway expansion into his kind of legal frontage, but it's not his driveway access because his legal frontage crosses a large wetland and watercourse. And so that was the violation. He had done some grading and filling and establishing a parking area basically within the wetland. The corrective action application required that he remove all of the process and stone that had been deposited and revegetate the wetland. He did do that planting back in 2016. In 2018, we did an inspection, but found that a majority of the plants had not done so well, so he did replant. I did a recent inspection again, and I'd say that the wetland area is now clear. The majority of the plants have survived, and it's very lush. So staff would recommend release at this point.
Okay, I guess I'll make a motion to release, to vote I'm sorry, yeah, that's what I want to do, to release the bond for S16 493. Do I have a second?
Second that.
Okay, thanks, Commissioner Pence. Any discussion? Okay, no discussion. So everybody in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? And anyone abstaining? Okay, so it looks like it passes. So for the bond release. And then we can move on to approval of minutes.
Mr. Chair, I have to excuse myself. It appears that we have a quorum without me. So if that's acceptable, I will depart.
Okay, all right.
Good
Have a
job.
nice evening.
Thank you. See you all next time.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay, so I looked over the meeting minutes and I just had one comment. On page, I think it's 4, where we have the elections of officers. It says that I'm Miss Brown for vice chair. So we could change that to vice chair.
So noted.
But otherwise, I didn't notice anything. Anybody?
Alexis, on page 1, I noticed, I don't know if I misread it or the second to last paragraph, it has Mr. Mailing in there. It looks like randomly on page 1. I don't know if that's
Okay. I did not see that.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Ah,
Okay. Well, if that's everything, I'll move to approve the meeting minutes for July 12th, 2022. Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Knight. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Then we can move on to comments of staff.
Yes, actually, the next is conservation initiatives, which was
Oh,
added.
sorry.
That's all right.
You're right.
Request
Conservation
of,
initiative.
Mr. Clocky. Let's see, I know that, and sorry, I think I mentioned I was not here. I've had a wacky few days, so I'm a little bit out of sorts. I'm looking for an email. I know that we had talked about working on reaching out to property owners that may have wetlands and or water courses on their properties. Let me just write down some numbers. And so then this is, so, one second. Okay, so there's a total of about 5,300 properties that have either wetlands, water courses, or upland review area on their property. Then there's about 2,600 properties that just have wetlands on it. And that's any wetlands, whether it's a field delineated wetland or what we call the estimated wetland, which is based on the Fairfield County's, the USDA regional mapping that's meant to be looked at on a Fairfield County wide scale. And that's what we call it, estimated. So out of those 2,600, they're almost equally split. About half of them have field delineated wetlands on their property, and about half of them are under areas that are called estimated wetlands. I think the hardest part of the group that I would love to reach out to in a focused manner are the hardest to identify. They're the ones that have wetlands, but they have never been field delineated, and the estimated wetland doesn't indicate they have wetlands. And I don't know how many of those
Could you
properties are out
define
there.
that more
Really?
clearly? So that's
What's that?
that's people with wetlands that don't know that they have wetlands, or has
Yeah.
this not been surveyed, or?
Yeah, so the wetland map, not by design, but by consequence of how we get that information is we have a disclaimer on it that says, this is for planning purposes only. And at the end of the day, the presence or non-presence of wetlands, and this comes right from state statute, the presence of wetlands is delineated by the actual character of the land. So whether the wetland soils are actually there or not.
So if we're using my backyard as example, which where I live,
Right.
my whole backyard would probably have wetland soil in it, right? I'm guessing, and
Correct.
all my neighbors would too, right? Even though it's grass, mostly grass, right?
Right. So you're yeah, and I can't pull up my GIS right now, but I don't believe that your property has a wide swath shown. You clearly have the river, and so you'd be regulated by 100 feet from the water course. But what's not shown is the likely full extent of wetland soils on your property, because the wetland soils include poorly drained, very poorly drained, but it also includes very well drained alluvial soils or river derived sand and gravels. So it's confusing. And those are really the ones that I think are that drive most of the kind of confusion in people coming before the commission and saying, I really didn't know.
And how many of them are there? Is that the 2,000 number?
There's 2,600 properties that we know have either field delineated wetlands or are also covered by that estimated wetland.
And it's the estimated that you think would be worth targeting?
Well, so the estimated is called estimated because it's a real estimate. It shows these soil groups that are 5 acres in size or greater. And so it kind of looks blob-like, but because it was based on soil profiles from, frankly, a pretty long time ago when we had a lot more agricultural land in Norwalk. The areas within those swaths are either a gross overestimate of the extent of wetlands. So for example, you can have like 3 houses within the 5-acre blob, but I know that those houses in the immediate area around them are no longer wetlands. Or there are other areas, there are quite a few other areas in Norwalk that have wetlands, but are not shown on that estimated wetland map.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And if they're not shown on even the estimated, how would we find them?
Yeah,
Or how would we be able to target them?
Yeah,
for-
I don't know how I would find them kind of as like a broad brush. Whenever anyone comes through to get a permit for something else, if they're getting a zoning permit or a building permit, they all come through the conservation office, and we look up each individual property and we assess whether there are wetlands on that, likely wetlands on that property or not. So that's how it's done, like kind of day to day, but I don't really have a good way of, other than my notes over the years of where I've seen, though this is probably wetlands, but it's not noted on our map. I then actually add it to the map as my own estimated wetland area, as a personal reference. So it's not on the official map. Other than those notations, I don't have a good way of kind of, finding all of them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
When was the map that you're working off of done, I guess, or?
Yeah, so I don't have the field survey in front of me. It is continually updated. Let's see. So we switched to, so long ago, before GIS, we had this one official map that would then get, it was a Mylar, and we would have to update it with a pen. But since we've had GIS, we continually update it. So whenever a new application comes in and there's field delineated wetlands, we add those field delineated wetlands. And if the property where there are field delineated wetlands used to be or had been in an area of estimated wetland blob, we'll delete the estimated wetland blob from that property where it's been field delineated, so that it doesn't have that kind of estimated area on it. So it's continually updated. The estimated soil survey from the USDA, I'd have to look it up. I don't know how old the estimated is. So the US DA and it's the Natural Resources and Conservation Service Division of the USDA continues to update soils mapping throughout the country. But I don't think that they've necessarily done any new mapping in Connecticut, in part because of Connecticut's adoption of the Wetland Act in 1972, where it kind of said, okay, we're going to use this soil classification system, but you have to use the actual character of the land and hire a soil scientist to actually figure out the extent of wetland on each individual property. So they haven't really updated that estimated broad brushed mapping. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, is there a way that we can request it to be updated? I mean, I don't.
Yeah, I
mean,
don't
that's
see
a
them going
larger-
out. So basically what they did was they had soil scientists go out and do what soil scientists do today, but on kind of a for the federal government, the broad scale. So they would send out scientists and they'd take some soil samples here and there and then look at topography and other characteristics, aerial photo interpretation, and drew the maps. Yeah, I don't know if there's a lot. I would be surprised if they had any interest in doing a thorough update. But I can look into that. Absolutely. So
I mean, is this something that UConn looks at in term, because I know they've been doing some studies and works on this.
I mean, they certainly look into certainly soils. I don't know if they do any large scale wetland mapping. But I can definitely explore that.
I guess it's a lot more complicated than I thought because of all these, everything's grandfathered in, and then there are different types of things and drainages and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's not easy, and commissions have talked about trying to send out letters multiple times in the past, and you know, if we can find a way to first of all get a clear message of what wants to be said, but then identifying it doesn't get all of the properties that really need to get it.
What about looking at the city has records of when people purchase homes, correct? And properties are transferred. I know that real estate, or at least I think they're supposed to give prospective buyers that information, but it doesn't always get there. Could we be like a second tier of like trying to inform the new owners so that at least people coming in might have an idea? Because I remember a while back, like a year ago, we had some people who bought a home. I want to say it was in Rowayton, and they like cleared off a hillside and like impacted a stream really badly because they didn't know. And I'm just wondering if like something like that, like, you know, kind of taking it at a smaller scale and like a progressive scale of
Right.
informing people.
Or
Yeah, I remember that one. That was a cash purchase. I remember that.
So
the
that
one
happened quick then
yeah.
too.
Whenever
There
there's
probably
a,
wouldn't have been time for us to get them a letter.
yes. So whenever there is a purchase, most places, most mortgage lenders require, you know, have a title search, and the most title searchers, but probably not all of them, but I don't know which ones don't contact me, but most do contact our office to ask, are there any wetlands or watercourses on this property, and are there any permits or violations? So we do always let them know, unless it's a cash purchase. And so then, yeah, we could, I'm just trying to think how to efficiently do this. So we could look at sales each month, and then we would just have to go through and see, look up each one to see if it had wetlands on it or not.
would there be a way to Cheryl's comment with the brokers and people? Because I know I redid a man-made pond in my backyard, and the guy who came and did it, and I think the edge of it was within 50 feet of the river.
Mhm.
And the guy said, am I gonna get in trouble with wetlands? I'm like, no, it's an existing structure, which I think it might have been how it would have been approved, but you know, you hold that guy's feet to the fire or something like that, just from an enforcement standpoint. I don't know. It does seem like a much more complicated question. I mean, but to Cheryl's point about the brokers might be a way to do it also, like if they're supposed to tell people that, they should, right?
Right.
Yeah,
So
and if we send a
there is
letter
law
to
that says
them,
that if there's wetlands, then the broker is supposed to have their, you know, the selling client declare that there are wetlands. That is a requirement. It's not necessarily always followed. They don't often.
and if it's an estimated wetland, do they have to declare anything?
They're supposed to, yes.
Oh, they are, okay. But maybe like a welcome letter. Hi, you should already know this, but
Right.
you have wetlands, or you may have wetlands, and this is, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, well, I mean, So the production of 5,300 letters, it would be difficult for my office, which is just me at the moment. So, and I don't have a very big budget for like postage. I'd have to go through my postage budget and potentially ask for some additional funds to get enough postage to send 5,000 letters. I know that I don't have enough postage to do that currently, but maybe a focus on recent property owners.
Alexis, is this something that we all feel is important? I mean, do we, as a commission, feel it's important to notify these people? You may have delineated or estimated wetlands, you can come up with some language. I know you're shorthanded and I don't want to add extra to your plate, but I mean, just to put it on the radar as a project, figure out a way to get you some help. I mean, only if it is important. If it's not, then I get it, but it doesn't seem like it should be too difficult. And it also, it's your budget, but it doesn't seem like it should be that much money. I mean, even if it's something we put next year and we make a request for next year's budget, I mean, it's if it's something important, it doesn't seem like it should be too difficult. I mean,
yeah, no, I agree. It's just getting.
I don't think we should rush it out the door. We should make it the most effective if we're going to do it. Because I mean, you're talking that'd be at least $3,000 or $4,000 in letters, right?
Right.
But I mean, like when the Bruce Baker property, talking to him, he had no idea that he was, not supposed to cut that stuff down.
Right.
So it is, and living in my neighborhood, one of my neighbors wanted to put up a shed. She's like, well, you're not going to report me because you're a wetland. I'm like, well, you just make sure it's not 50 or 100 feet and then do it, You should be clear. People they're pretty ignorant about the rules, which I sympathize with. But at the same time, like it's kind of, I don't know if a letter's the way to do it or something, but that seems to be, anyways, that was my thinking in bringing it up, but I don't want to make more work. So maybe we keep talking about it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't, I am not on social media, but the city certainly has, social media feeds. I don't know if any of you, you're like a representative Norwalk residents. If any of you are signed up to receive, whether it's City of Norwalk, Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, I think.
That's actually a good idea.
Do any of you guys so we could certainly kind of make something that's, just like a, hey.
Yeah, something that pops up in people's Facebook feed.
Right.
Emails would be a lot cheaper too, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not one to be a good example. I'm not a huge social media consumer.
Right.
But I do know like a fair amount of people go on to things like Nextdoor or The Hour or things like that we could leverage.
Right. And I know that in the past we've sent press releases to The Hour and they've been great at giving us, front page, don't do work in a wetland without potential fines, or, I don't know, their headline is always a little bit off, but the content is fantastic. All right.
I don't know, Alexis. I feel like in the big picture, this could save you a lot of time and trouble, right? If everybody who has wetlands actually knows about it, maybe less violations. I'm not an expert in this stuff. I just doing a targeted distribution, whether it's through email or through mail, should not be an issue. I mean, this is the city of Norwalk. We're not talking about a whole lot of money. I'm not going to get into your budget, but I mean, we help stomp our feet and say, hey, give her 10 grand just to do this. It's for the betterment of the environment and for every resident's awareness,
Right.
How would we get you more money?
So I'd have to do a special appropriation. I can look at, so I don't have, the conservation budget is very, very small, but I can look at the planning and zoning budget and potentially move some stuff around, or I can ask for a special appropriation, which is through the Board of Estimate and Taxation. It's a kind of a request for unanticipated expenses that in any moving around of budget items more than $5,000 is required to go before the BET. I would have to talk to I'll figure out the exact cost for for what for like a standard envelope mailing, and then work backwards and see what I can scrape together first.
The money could come
But
from,
right now, the budget just pretty much covers the permitting, the certified return receipt mailings that we do for permits. And there's not much, every year I just kind of get close to spending that, and that's it. So,
Can't use the open space fund, correct?
sorry, Matt.
The open space fund, can you use any of that money for this?
No,
How about all that money you're saving on being short-staffed? Can't move some of that?
well, yeah, I think we've already kind of used that. So just to transition, there should be, hopefully we'll have a new land use technician starting August 22nd. So we've had a bunch of internal movement of promotions within planning and zoning, which impacts conservation. So we have one new land tech, but they have no experience doing wetlands work. And then we've have a hopeful candidate starting on the 22nd that has had some. So that will help at least with the all the inspections at first, and then we'll move them into application review and move the paper. So.
Okay.
I don't know where we go from here. I do think it's a good idea.
All right, well, how about for the next meeting, I will look at the budget a bit more closely and have some firmer numbers. And then I will also look into the ease of, I don't see if it is a priority, I don't see why we can't do a targeted hard copy mailing and a social media output as well. So I'll figure out the logistics of like physically doing both of those things. And then after that, I'll work on the drafting of the actual message that I'd love for you guys to look at, because I sometimes I can get too technical because I say this over and over and over every day, and I would definitely value any input as far as the message and how it's messaged, because we want something that people read and they don't just put in the recycling.
I would think keep it simple, right? If anyone gives you a hard time, I don't know if everybody agrees, but you can blame us. Just say your commissioners are putting pressure on you.
yeah.
Sounds good.
We're a tough crowd.
Yeah, I think some of it has to do with like, what are the greatest hits that come up in these meetings is really about like the boundary areas, plantings, silt fence, these are the things that are, to be aware of. It doesn't
Right.
have to necessarily be a whole thing. It's like, just, as you think about your property and stewarding your property, we would really appreciate you thinking about native plantings, buffer zones, leaving the buffer zones and respect, here's why they're important. And
Okay.
Okay, so are we all set on conservation initiatives? Should we move on to, or did we kind of mesh that with comments of staff a little bit?
Yeah, that was the staffing was really my
Okay,
comment.
all right. Any comments from commissioners? Any additional?
You did a great job running the meeting, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, so anybody want to make a motion to adjourn? Okay, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second the motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Have a nice night, everyone.
All right, have a good night. Thank you all.
Okay, thank
Talk to
you.
in 2 weeks.